Humans are created in the image of God, but Jesus is the image of God. Look at Jesus. This is episode 5 with my guest Summerlin Van Dyke, and together we gather.
Shut up and sit down.
Hey, welcome to In Process, where we gather to remind one another what Jesus has done, what Jesus is doing, and what Jesus will do. People invest in what they believe in, so show us if you believe in what we're doing by clicking that thumbs up. Gather with us regularly by clicking that subscribe button. Enjoy!
We're back with episode 5, Summer and I, and we are in process, and Jesus has gathered us here together. We left off last time with you chatting about how people who don't even believe in God can reflect the image of God.
Yeah.
And that's really fascinating to me. And you talked a little bit about Waterboy, who was one of the people in your posse, in your little makeshift community family.
My hiking clan.
Your little hiking clan. And who else? It was also Puddin,
Acorn,
Peaches, and then Waterboy.
Yep.
And so I'm curious. That got me really curious.
And others off and on.
But those were your main pack.
Yes.
Yeah, and so tell us a little bit more about any others, about how they reminded you. Who do you want to go first? You already talked a little bit about Waterboy, but how did Acorn, how did Peaches, how did Puddin reflect the image of God from your perspective?
Yeah. We can do Acorn next. I probably spent the most time with Acorn, other than Waterboy, hiking. Acorn, I would say, reflected God in the way that he was super kind, I would say, in like a very deep way. He was also very like deeply caring. But it was never like a big thing for him. It was never like a show thing, or if it was never like a you could tell it was just like something that came naturally. It wasn't something that he was pushing for any sort of belief, I guess.
So he was humble.
Yeah.
You felt there's a humility that he had.
Yeah. He was humble.
To the degree that like maybe he didn't want a lot of attention.
Yeah, to a degree. Super intelligent as well, which I definitely think reflects the character of God. And that was a really cool thing, why I spent so much time with him, because we would just get into awesome, like very intelligent conversations. So
when you say intelligent conversation, a little bit, like what do you mean? Because there's some people think intelligence can be construed a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
There's emotional intelligence. There's just like having a photographic memory. There's knowing lots of facts, but not being able to apply.
Yeah.
The street smarts.
It was like a depth, I would say, if that helps anymore.
Philosophical, maybe?
Yeah, a little philosophical. A depth of like understanding, of explanation of things around him, of perception of things around him, and like just big relevant things that were going on in the world at the time.
Yeah.
I guess. So yeah, that was kind of how I saw.
Sure.
And he was probably the most like, let's do this together. Like, we're just all gonna do it together. And then if we weren't doing it together, then he was cool with that too. It was just very natural for him to like go from group to solo to group to solo. And I think he felt very comfortable being solo, and he understood that was good for him. And he felt very comfortable in a group and understood that was good for him too. So
when he was solo, do you think that this is Acorn we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So when he was solo, was there any, he didn't necessarily believe in God? Do you think he was just like in his head talking to himself? Or do you think that he had any sort of hey God, if you're out there, I'm talking to you kind of deal? Or
I think he was probably just in his head a lot, I would say. I don't think he ever, as far as I know,
Sure.
he didn't express that he would have a dependence on God in any sort of way, especially in his thoughts, I would say.
But he did appreciate,
unless it came up.
But he did appreciate community with the
Yeah.
group. And then there was times where he'd just like to reflect, just be alone with his thoughts.
Yeah. And I think he was the most like flexible with either of those things. Like I would say everyone else leaned one way or the other, but he was the most flexible in group and solo. So that was interesting.
The reason why I'm asking a little bit about, like, do you think that he, hey, God, if you're out there type of deal, is God, we know God it's been revealed through scriptures that God is triune. And so there's a perfect community formed within God. And when God manifested in the flesh, incarnated, and walked the earth, most people, when they think about Jesus, they think about a person who is with lots of people all the time doing just really fancy miracles and whatnot in a very general view.
Yeah.
Stereotyping a lot there, but we see Jesus going off alone a lot.
Yeah. A lot.
And going off to be with his Father, and commune, in the Spirit with, his Father. And so he took great comfort in the fellowship that he had with his Father, because he was immersed in this broken, depraved, dark world. Him being light, bringing light to the darkness, but the darkness didn't necessarily want the light. Yeah. And so that's why I was a little bit curious, we're talking about how these people reflect God.
Yeah.
And so, but you saw him reflect God in a philosophical way, and knowledge as well, and just trying to gain understanding. Do you think he had any clue whatsoever that there was a God telling him a lot of those things, or?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
But I mean, I could be wrong, but that was not how I would say.
Yeah, from your perception.
Yeah, and like Waterboy, I would say maybe. Even Peaches, I would say maybe, but
yeah.
I would definitely say Acorn probably wasn't coming from that. I don't know his like background with that kind of stuff either. We didn't really talk about his background a lot with that kind of stuff. So I don't really know. And that does shape people to a degree too.
If you had to sum up Acorn, like the longing of his heart, what was the longing? What do you, from your perspective, from thinking about who Acorn was, what was the longing of Acorn's heart, and how did that reflect God?
Purpose, for sure. Not
a
in like a
mission kinda
strong way. Yeah, but he did have a lot of purpose. Like everything that he did had purpose to it.
Sure.
I think.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
yeah, because we were all created for purpose.
Yeah.
We were created for an eternal purpose, relationally, but now, since we're in a very broken world, there's a lot of restoration, redemption, a lot of purpose that can be had. So
yeah,
hopefully Acorn discovers that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. What about Peaches?
Peaches, I think, reflected, he was very humorous, which I think is a character that a quality that God has,
Why do you think that? Do you have any specific reason for that, or?
I just think that, I think that God, why wouldn't God embody multiple characteristics of humanity? All of characteristics of humanity, and like, why would humor have been created if he didn't enjoy that as well?
Yeah, so we see that when you read Jesus in the New Testament, or the Harmony of the Gospels or Merged Gospels. When you read his dialogue with people, there's a lot of times he's funny.
Yeah, it's true.
he flipped things upside down a lot, and not just tables in a purifying type of way, but in humorous ways. There's a lot of tongue-in-cheek things when you go into the original language. He did a lot of play on words. Nothing's coming to my mind right off the top, but yeah. So there is definitely God definitely has humor, and doesn't mind using humor, both in just a joyous sense, but also in a playful, tongue-in-cheek kind of way.
Yeah, and I guess like just as I understand and read him more and more and see his like storytelling like aspect that comes out with parables and just in general, in the way he speaks and stuff, my mind just gets open to like, oh wow, like there's more depth here that it's not like the classic Jesus that I would say I was seeing before.
Yeah, when you really get into the dialogue and the narration and you read Jesus, I tell people all the time, people who say, well, I don't like Christianity or I don't believe in it or all this kind of stuff. All the myriad of reasons. There's billions of reasons not to to be skeptical, and it's okay to be skeptical. God knows we're skeptical, and he's wooing us. He's winning us over in real time. But I tell people all the time, read Jesus.
Yeah.
So read him. Read what he said, and it'll catch you. So much. He takes me off guard all the time.
Yeah. And
I've been studying and reading him for a really long time. And I can't believe he said that. I can't believe he just said that. Often when I'm reading, it just blows me away.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, definitely. So the more understanding I think I get of that and just being blown away, like you were saying, more and more. I just see that humor is definitely in his characteristic.
Yeah, so Peaches had humor.
Yeah.
Was it quirky humor? Was it
definitely quirky? Definitely like all the time. Like I don't know how he was just like always humorous in like very creative ways too. It was like a very creative humor. It wasn't just like one subject. He wasn't just like stuck on one thing. It was just very all over the place. Just life was just
so it was
humorous.
Quirky, funny, upbeat, or was it kind of dark, cynical, or?
No, it was pretty upbeat.
Yeah,
I would say.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's cool. What would you say was the longing of Peaches' heart? How did he? What was his hope overall? What would if Peaches could have redemption in the world? What would that look like? Do you think?
I think he did long for community often. And then he also, like family, community, and I guess like going along with the humor, for joy as well. He had a very big longing for joy.
Yeah, humans want to celebrate and you're really familiar with that, right?
Yes, I am.
That's a big part of your personality. What drives you is you desire to keep yourself filled with joy.
Yes.
Right. To a fault at times, and we can go into that a little bit later, but it's okay to long for a better future. It's okay. And that's one of the things that we believe Jesus did for us, is we always know, no matter how bad things get, no matter how desperate we are, no matter how much we don't understand what's happening in our circumstances or in our worlds, there's a hope that he is redeeming things. He is transforming things into something greater and better. And every human's heart, regardless of whether you believe in Jesus or not, right, longs for something better. You get hurt, you want to be healed,
right?
And it's a given. It's hardwired into all of us.
Totally.
Yeah. Anything more on Peaches?
No, those are the main things I think I saw in him.
Yeah, and so and then we talked about Acorn, we talked about Waterboy. So lastly, but not least, Puddin', right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did Puddin' reflect
Jesus?
The image of God.
Yeah, he also had like a very like deep intelligence understanding, and it was more of a pursuit than Acorn, I would say. It was more of a desire of his to seek after understanding or knowledge or better perception or
So that's
all of those kinds of things.
So that's kind of interesting. Let me push a little bit. So how does that reflect the nature of God? If God is omniscient, if he knows everything, all knowing, then like seeking knowledge or understanding, how would that reflect the image of God from your perspective?
So I see it as more of a seeking than like a general seeking than like a seeking of knowledge. I saw anyway in him, and I think Jesus was, I don't know what the word is, seeked out,
Sought out.
There we go. I'm definitely your daughter.
Just make words up. That's what I do.
He definitely sought out. Jesus definitely sought out his Father. He sought out a lot of things, I think, and from a young age. And so I think that, like, I saw that, like, aspect of seeking things out. And, like, in similar ways as I think Jesus did, he just didn't necessarily, do it because of Jesus. So
so that you just brought up something fascinating that I didn't really come to an actual realization or an understanding of really until not very long ago. So I grew up in the church and Christianity, Judeo-Christian philosophy teachings, whatnot, from all different ways, because not all of what I learned and grew up in was clear. But one of the things that was very pushed was the divinity of Jesus, that he was God, and which made him very unrelatable to me. I just that's great that Jesus could command the sea and do all these things, but I can't. And that made me feel very isolated from him, and I couldn't relate very much. But you're pointing out something that I just came into an understanding of, the humanity of Jesus, that he limited himself, and a lot of theologians and smarter people than I have spent a lot of time, seeing all this stuff. But that's another aspect, is when you put your hope in Jesus and you get the Holy Spirit, you have the mind of Christ. And so you don't have to be super intelligent to understand some of these things.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
And so, but Jesus sought out his Father. When he was a little boy, he sought his Father at the temple, and he was gaining understanding. He grew in wisdom and stature. And a lot of people don't see Jesus like that. But God became human and was tempted in every way so that he could be like us, in the sense of experience what we experienced and be tested and tried like we've been tested and tried. He had sorrow, he grieved, he was tired, he got hungry. These are all things that we find out about Jesus that a lot of people don't even understand, because they've never actually opened up the scriptures and read about this God they say that they worship as God. But clearly that's a different thing. But
yeah, and I think some people have more of a tendency to lean towards the divinity of Jesus, and some people have a easier time leaning towards the humanity of Jesus to a degree. I think usually people lean one way more than the other, but both of them take away something from the characteristic of Jesus.
Yeah, something's meaningful to them either way.
Yeah,
and different places in your life. When you're hurting and struggling, you want to know that he was human like you were, so he can relate and he can help you in your time of need. When you're looking for a savior, someone who's actually strong enough, capable enough to actually fix your problems, you're hoping that he's fully God.
Right.
And he can fully accomplish what he needs to.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. He needs to be both, without question. Anything more on Puddin'? So he sought things out. What would you say is Puddin's hope? If redemption was in the world, what would you say that his heart longed for?
Yeah. So on the note of him wanting to seek out things, So this is interesting. I think his heart longed to better himself, but in a redemptive light, to find Jesus in that and to become more like Jesus, I guess. So, like, I don't know he was always looking to better himself when he sought out knowledge, when he sought out perspective, all of those things. But in a redemptive light, it was being transformed, truly. Like, he wanted to be transformed.
He was pretty self-aware, and he longed to be free. He longed to be redeemed. And so, do you feel like he was finding that or experiencing that to a degree?
Yeah, maybe, but I think it was in some false ways, I would say. I would say he was definitely he dove into that spiritual realm, but in, misguided ways. Sure. I would say. Yeah, as people do.
Yeah. So, like, in what way?
That, more that, like, meditation, yoga, getting some sort of high. Yeah. All of those kinds of things that I think is very, people who long for that spiritual connection have a tendency to fall towards, I would say.
The mystical, experiential form, right? Yeah. Not that meditation. I mean, Jesus meditated. Yeah. But what do you mean by meditation? Yeah. Right. And so different people have different understandings of what meditation actually is. And so Jesus, without question, was reflective and sought out oneness. And that's a place where Jesus was he was fulfilled in a way that until we look to Jesus for our fulfillment, we don't get fulfilled. We're not fulfilled. Yeah. We're empty, looking for something to fill us. And experiences or humor or joy or looking for highs, all of that can, like, falsely fill us. Yeah. And so, like, from a pseudo spirituality, there's a emptying meditativeness to that. And I don't know, that'd be interesting because you don't really tend to lean that way personally. Not really. Right?
No, I don't have a tendency to, like, sit in that place. Yeah. Or just sit in general. I have a hard time just being, I don't know.
Yeah, you're looking for the experience, the high of the experience, the joy of the experience itself.
I'm more of an active reflector than a meditative reflector. Yeah. That's I think a good way to put it.
Yeah, and I would say I'm more of a meditative reflector for sure. Because if I go into a state, I can, like, empty myself to the place where, like, it's just me and my thoughts, and I'm just spiraling, and I'm not doing anything. I can sit somewhere and meditate for endless amounts of time until I just, like, collapse within myself. That's a very dark thing. Yeah. Now some of that type of meditation can be helpful and healthy, but often it's not, because I'm really looking for something that I'm not finding within myself when I'm in that place.
Yeah, again, if Jesus is not involved, if you're trying to find that within yourself, either way, I mean,
so kind of like what you did with,
be misguided.
Sorry. So kind of like what you did with Waterboy and Acorn and Puddin' and Peaches. And Jesus, may you awaken all of those guys and help them to find what they're looking for. You is the fulfillment of all those things. But how would somebody, do you think, describe you before you were looking to Jesus? How did you reflect? Because while you were on the trail, just to reiterate, you weren't really looking to Jesus. You were open to him. You saw him in creation. You felt that he created things, but it wasn't very personal, intimate. your hope wasn't in him per se. He was kind of on the back
burner,
right?
if he fit
in, right? And so like, yet you still reflected the image of God. How would you say you were reflecting the image of God before you actually put your hope in him?
That's tricky for me to answer just because for an outside perspective, it's harder for me to like think of what I would have.
What you'd think of yourself.
Yeah.
It's an interesting question.
Definitely.
Some people have more trouble with it than others.
I would say it definitely would have probably leaned towards the joyous aspect.
Exuberance, maybe?
Yeah. And maybe the seeking aspect as well. I'd say those two were probably what came across, I think.
In times of difficulty, you probably brought a way to look at things from a healthy, upbeat perspective.
Yeah. Yes, I'd say. I think I was also... Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah.
Something I
So
think
how about your hope? What if Summer had, if the world was being redeemed in a specific way, just during that time while you were on trail, what was your heart longing for?
Yeah. My heart was longing for also purpose, I would say. And that looked like in the form of accomplishment, I would say. But yeah, wasn't.
So purpose, you're looking for a mission.
Yeah.
A mission or purpose in what way?
A mission.
Yeah.
Something to focus on.
Yeah, hiking 2,200 miles is a pretty serious mission.
Yeah.
Seriously missional person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. It's pretty on
Not
mission.
everybody's ambitions are to hike 2,200 miles.
No, I don't think so.
Right.
Even the people who were hiking 2,200 miles, their mission wasn't exactly to hike 2,200 miles. So
Right.
I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's actually keep this one a little short and wrap it up right there.
Sweet.
We'll be back to discuss and dialogue maybe how you started seeking out false gods just for the rest of the trail, and then we'll transition into finishing up the trail and then moving to Ely and what that looked like and what happened up in Ely, because you went from one world to a radically different world.
Very radically different world.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
Right? Because how much time was there between when you got off the trail to when you went to school?
Like a week, I think. Maybe.
Yeah.
Not even.
Yeah. So your world's changed very rapidly.
Yes.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to understand a little bit more of that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Well, thanks for gathering with me, Summer.
Yeah.
See you next time.
Okay. Feeling provoked, angered, encouraged, inspired by what you heard? Don't keep it to yourself. Comment below. Put your supportive beliefs into action by clicking all the clicky stuff. Lastly, gather with those around you and remind one another what Jesus has done, is doing, and will do.